Good morning. It's 10 o'clock in the morning in Madrid at the Palacio de Cibeles Madrid platform, the first international hub between Europe and Latin America. This is our third and last session of this Congress with more than 500 companies, more than 120 20 countries represented, and many other organizations. We've been talking about sustainability, digitalization, energy transition, and all challenges faced by our society and our companies, but none of these challenges would be possible to face without people with their talents, which is more of a global talent nowadays, something that companies need nowadays. And now we've got Sonia Alias, Director for People at Barabase.biz. I hope you enjoy the session. I thank Madrid Platform for talking about future innovation and talent so that we can talk about talent. First, we need to understand where we come from and where we're at this very moment. If we look at the past, one of the factors defining past decades was that we had digital transformation was a point of focus for big companies. And as you can see in that graph, we see that as the price of software has come down, we see how there's been an increase in the number of users. A lot has been said about the need to face up to digital transformation, and the pandemic has accelerated the incorporation of technology into those sectors, entities where technology was not so widespread. This has allowed to make it more democratic, make access to technology more democratic. That applies to SMEs, startups, entrepreneurs, small entrepreneurs, and now they're able to compete with a big company. And thanks to technology, during the pandemic, many companies could keep up working, but the COVID-19 pandemic did not only threat our health, but rather it has shown many structural gaps that already existed, and it has accelerated this transition towards a different type of work. This has been more of a priority, and now when we talk about digital transformation, we refer to something much more wide-ranging. We also talk about social transformation, the way we relate to each other, the way we communicate with each other, etc. It's a cultural transformation that we need, also within companies. So in the next slide, if we have a look at the past, another important factor determining our present is the following one. We come from a culture that was generated during the second industrial revolution, and this depended on land, capital, and work as tangible assets. If someone had land and put it to work, then they could draw profit from it. That was the model back then. But in the last few years, we see that productivity was not so closely related to that past model. Why does that happen? Well, the world has changed, and we were managing organizations as in the times of the Industrial Revolution. We thought in terms of output, input, resources, people, designing a plan and not ever changing it, but following it very strictly. But the case is that the world has changed. Another important aspect in this respect is the incorporation of software. And when we incorporate software, we gain access to all those intangible assets such as data, talent, or intellectual property. And at the end of the day, the intangible is what determines our age, and companies must invest in those intangible assets to create value and to be able to scale up our activities. If we have a look at the following slide, we see how the world has changed. The new society is facing new realities, and companies should analyze them. We need to think about how we're going to build the culture we're aiming at in our companies. There have been factors having an impact on our health, also on economy. Risk is a factor as well. Climate impact, caring for the planet, digital gap, cybersecurity, all those concerns are quite evident right now. A new social and economic order is appearing, and progress will need a more of a collective responsibility. So in human resources departments in our companies, we need to analyze all those realities, those concerns. We need to understand them and work on a culture facilitating those mindset shifts. Those realities could come from the technological side of things, but also from the onset of COVID-19 as well. Incorporation of technology in our everyday life is evident. This is a reality. Virtually all of us buy products on the internet, and the digital gap and cybersecurity are matters of concern to us. We know that technology creates disruption as well, so there's a need for us to continue updating our activities every day, and that's an ever bigger challenge. Challenges are bigger and bigger. We need to keep updating and adapting to those changes. So we need to develop new skills in terms of more technical knowledge and other skills as well, such as adaptation, cooperation, innovation. On the next slide, we see a new reality, demographical changes. In the last decades, there was a migration from the rural to the urban areas, the big cities. There were opportunities to be found. The pandemic has changed that. Teleworking has allowed companies to draw talent from any place in the world. We can have very talented people located virtually anywhere in the world. If we focus on the diversity that we have in our companies, also from a generational point of view, we see people of different ages, so their concerns, their values, and the principles guiding their lives are different, and we should be well aware of that when we are defining which actions we need to take. For example, baby boomers were looking for a job for the whole of their lives. They thought in terms of faithfulness to a single company. The Z generation have different concerns. They champion social causes. They are very familiar with the internet. They were born with a smartphone under their arms. If we had Eva Llanos or Rubius here talking about the future, if they were participants right here today, they would be improvising and they would be using different platforms. These technological and demographic changes have opened up a new paradigm of life. We've come from a more steady, more stable life with training in our early years, then work during our mature years, and then retirement, to a new paradigm where life is a transition. We are constantly learning. It's lifelong learning. So we will be on board the workplace, but we will still be active after we leave the workplace. So, in the face of these new realities, we ask ourselves in companies, what will happen after COVID-19? Will those changes stay forever, or are they just temporary? And what are the new concerns in this respect? These concerns mainly have to do with social welfare, caring for the planet, pollution. I remember that after 2 months lockdown a year ago, we see how pollution was gone, our cities were cleaner, and we were more aware of the sustainability issue and caring for the planet. Movements such as Me Too or Black Lives Matter are there. Inclusion is a hot topic, let's say. And pandemic has also brought to us important challenges to our welfare. Workers have been making an effort to adapt to the new forms of work in very little time, and we drew a distinction between essential workers who were teleworking and those that were not so necessary and were temporarily without a job, even though they had subsidies helping them. So we need to develop new skills in the case of those workers to adapt to new opportunities and to cater for new concerns. We've got essential workers that are worried about their health. We also have people who have left the work market and need to reskill themselves and adapt to new paradigms, and then people who are still working. We might be forgetting what the real problem is in this respect. If we go on to the next slide, we see we've got all those technological changes, demographic changes, different concerns popping up. And in organizations, we're very aware that we face two challenges. On the one hand, facing a complexity in strategic and organizational terms, and then trying to avoid burnout workers and the obsession with productivity of workers. So the answer we're giving in our corporations boil down to two main responses. On the one hand, policies for talent management, intangible assets, as we were saying earlier, and then a basic principle, namely listening to our employees, understanding why they work for us every day, what's important for them. And that way, we'll be able to align their values with our own, and our goals as companies will be able to generate experiences that are really rewarding. And on the other hand, social transformation of companies is there. Social responsibility should be incorporated into corporate strategies for sustainable models. That way, we'll achieve corporate governance and strategic development. Sustainable business models are the answers that corporations are giving in order to face up to the big challenges that we have today in terms of ethics and sustainability from an environmental point of view and equity. So we see there's a fall in motivation. First thing we should take into account in terms of sustainability and new models is which moment we're going through. Well, it's a transformation, not just in digital terms, but there are other types of transformation as well. In social terms, lifestyle is changing. We are worried about equality, equity, and we really need to be aware of those things. And transformation needs to be more digital, more social, and fairer. The way we can make progress towards the value of intangible assets have to do with innovation hubs. When we want to promote innovation, an innovational culture, talent management is key, and empowerment. Empowerment is possible when our workers are autonomous and they're able to manage their own work. Also, when we generate trust so that our workers can show themselves as they are, so we are respecting diverse types of talents, and when there's an alignment between the values of the worker and the aims, the goals of the organization or the company. So elements of an innovative mindset, on the one hand, corporate culture based on the aims of the company, then resource management, then cooperation with different teams. Autonomy is very important as well, having a clear mandate on what we need to aim for and being free to manage it. Inspiration is very important as well, both within and outside the organization, and experiments as well. So, regarding the organizational structure, promoting diversity is very important. Diversity is a fundamental element in order to promote free innovation. Innovative mindsets are 6 times bigger in egalitarian cultures than in those cultures that are not so based on equality. So equality and diversity and their promotion make an important impact on innovative mindsets. And here you can see the different features associated to that type of structure within an organization. A study has shown that there are concerns regarding biases in the case of Google, Amazon, and other media. So when researchers, in this case, presented pictures of congressmen and women in these media, they showed that there were more physical comments when related to women's pictures than to men's pictures. Regarding men's pictures, it was all about the profession, the values, whereas for women, the physical aspect was the main topic for comment. So we see that algorithms in this respect are not mathematically neutral, but rather they tend to apply or even increase certain cultural biases and elements that come from the past historically. So avoiding biases in artificial intelligence has become a very interesting challenge for the next few years. And our challenge is to generate a culture with non-biased data. Next slide. I'll be brief, but companies should be understood as a network of links, connections between the different people composing them. Trial and error, generating efficient teams, promoting equality for all people, inclusion, freedom to show ourselves as we are. Those are the main elements. Next slide. Here, I would say that diversity has something to do with gender, but also with race, with generation, sexuality, many factors. But regarding the generational aspect, we sometimes think that startups are just related to young people, but this study shows that 45 years of age is the average age for startuppers, let's say. In Spain, we've been making people of 50 years old or a little bit older to retire, and that age group could add lots of value to our market. So if a person is 45 years old and achieves the biggest um, successes at that age and we are retiring them, we should really think about what we are doing. And we see that after retirement, there is big interest in keep on learning and being active and participating on the work market. Next slide. I think it was interesting to comment.
Basecamp, as you know, it is in Silicon Valley. And you know the story, don't you? So there were lots of controversies, previous ones, and they decided to forbid the staff to talk politics at the workplace. When this was published, this guideline was published, a large part of the staff decided to leave the company. They left voluntarily. So this means that new generations consider that these cultural aspects are very important, diversity and integrating on teams. Maybe my parents' generation would not have thought this way, and they would have stayed there in that company. Now, if we go to the next slide, here we have gathered the skills for 2025. This is related to all these, you know, VUCA, volatile, changing, uncertain, all these aspects. So we need to develop new skills all the time, which are related to lots of different things. We have to be resilient, we have to be flexible, we have to be tolerant, etc., etc. In the next slide, you can see the answer to some of the challenges we have been tackling in the previous slides regarding talent and social transformation. Here I would like to say that our future will be digital and sustainable, or we will have no future at all, and the social transformation of companies impact the products they develop and the way these are launched, these are publicized, and it impacts also our relationships, the company's relationships with its clients. This is a strategy of the company, and the starting point has to be this purpose. This transformation is structural across the whole company. It is strategical also because it questions how we are doing things currently. It questions the business model, and it is cooperational too. We need the cooperation of all stakeholders, of all actors, and of the whole ecosystem of the company for the company to be successful. And this is the right moment to initiate a competitive social transformation which is competitive with business results and also with the social and environmental impacts we are going to generate around us. If organizations are capable of measuring that impact, and if we are able to align that with our purposes, then we will obtain excellent results. COVID-19 has accelerated the digitalization processes of our lives, and it has highlighted the lacks, the scarcity of other important elements such as sustainability, for instance. And for many years, companies had thought of, been thinking around results and dividends to shareholders. But during the COVID crisis, it has become absolutely evident that we have to be closer to citizens, to people, to society. The SDGs always come to our mind, right? And we think of the environment, we think of environment-related objectives, but there are 17 SDGs which actually cover other fields such as labor precarious or unfairness or lack of equality, and we tend to think only of the environment, of nature. And now, to conclude, I would like to say that all changes have to be simultaneous, they have to be green and digital, and they have to be cooperational too, and fair. In this last slide, we can see that we have to orchestrate these coherent ecosystems, and we have to align our purposes to our results. We have to fight in order to create positive results not only in business terms but also in society and in the environment. So we have to have a result-oriented culture, but results in all fields. Thank you. Thank you. I am Esther Garcia. I am Director of Special Projects at Barrabés BIS, and it is a pleasure to be here today and to be able to talk here at the Town Hall of Madrid. We are going to have a roundtable on management and coordination of talent in organizations. In such a changing environment as today's environment, well, managing talent in corporations, in businesses is very important. Sonia Alias, in her previous speech, talked about two very important drivers at companies, such as sustainability and digitalization. The first one, sustainability, is important because employees become the focus of that transformation process, transformation force within companies, and they become one of the vectors of that transformation. And then digitalization is very important too, because more than ever employees have had to adapt and to enhance their skills in order to be aligned and in harmony with what companies are demanding. All of this turns these vectors into drivers that have to be managed with innovation in an innovative manner. This is what we're going to talk about because it's very important to know how companies are facing this new challenge. We have here two pioneering companies in the field of talent management, and we will now proceed in order and we will welcome Marta del Olmo. She is Director of patients in several public hospitals in the community of Madrid. Then we have Javier Arcos, who is Coordinator of Innovation at WICO, and he is Medical Director at the Foundation Fundación Jiménez Díaz. Welcome. And we also have here Patricia Alvarez Sanchez, is Vice Director of Organizational Development and People at the Director General of the Post Institution in Spain. Welcome. Thank you to all of you for being here today at this roundtable with us. We're going to talk about internal talent management, as I have said. And now we have our first question. It is the most important question. How are these innovation and talent management programs being developed at your corporations, at your companies? What could you tell us, Marta, about this? Could you give us some examples too? Of course. Thank you, Esther, for inviting me to participate in this event. Something that is key in an environment such as ours in the health sector, well, they're traditionally our professionals, and our culture has been very much identified with skills such as science and technology. So our profiles have been very technically skilled, but they have not been as participatory as we need today. Participating, leading in a new way, as we are seeing that is important today, as Sonia said in her speech. So we have identified some very clear milestones for this transformation to become something tangible in our organizations. The most important one, as Sonia said, is strategy. So we really need to have a very good strategy. Many organizations do not even know what their strategy is, or it's not well defined, or they have a large strategy which is too vague and which professionals are not familiarized with. So for us, a well-defined strategy is absolutely key. Everyone has to be familiarized with that, and it has to help align the whole organization and all projects. 3 pillars: working for health, working for a better experience of patients, and a better selection of resource and efficiency. When strategies are well defined, it is much easier to go to the next step, which is not the responsibility of the leadership of management, but everyone has to be responsible. Leadership has to be more horizontal, more informal, so every professional has to be aware of their responsibilities. We have lots of talented people who are really willing to contribute and to help change the way we have worked traditionally, and they need to be part of this strategy and of this mindset. We have worked hard and we have set up our innovation unit. They are represented here today, and this is a 4-hospital network, and this is a structure actually where we have a new kind of leadership. This enables to support talent and transformation and this new way of working and thinking. This is multidisciplinary, a multidisciplinary way of working. This network of 4 hospitals enables us to create new ways of thinking. And in the area of people, which is one of our main projects, which we manage from the WICO organization, is a good example of how to manage talent. Some people ask us, how have you managed this? Well, in our case, we have 80 professionals in our talent team from these 4 hospitals. 60 of them are doctors, 20 are nurses, and they are people who really were very keen to change the clinical practice. We really wanted to have them on board in this transformation. We knew what the skills were we needed, and they have these skills, and they are going to help us be the social ambassadors of this change. They are going to be these ambassadors who will help us to go through a smooth transformation and to reach a cooperational way of working. That is marvelous, Marta. Thank you so much. Well, the next question will go to the post. So what are the transformations that this institution has gone through during the COVID pandemic, and are these changes going to stay? Well, first of all, I would like to thank you for this invitation. It's a pleasure to be here. I represent the post here in this event. This has been our company, our house for a long time, and I'm very proud of that. When the state of emergency was declared, well, it was a huge surprise to us all too, of course, and the main idea was to ensure the safety of our employees. That was our main goal from the very first moment. First of all, because we had many workers who had to continue to go out to the street and be in touch with their clients. We had to ensure this public universal service, of course. So in all those posts where we saw that being present at the office was not important, we decided to act in a different way. We have a long history that goes back to 100 years, and we have always worked in person at the workplace, of course. We had carried out all kinds of pilot projects to start teleworking, but nevertheless, this teleworking idea was something we thought would come in later on in the future. Well, on top of the technological part, which of course was fundamental, we all had to use computers, of course, and we had to use other means. Well, besides that, we had to improve our processes. And for us, people management was absolutely fundamental because there are all these different aspects. There's the social aspect and the professional aspect, and the situation is totally new. And our managers were not used to leading teams in a remote way, so we had to think of all of this. But we were really keen to know whether our employees were well at all times. We accompanied all managers, all team leaders from the very beginning because we wanted to give them all necessary resources and tools for them to be able to be close to their co-workers and to their staff so that they could work remotely. Then, since we want to be so close to our employees, we conducted a survey. We wanted to know what our employees were experiencing and what they were expecting from the future. This survey helped us a lot because we gathered a lot of information. They gave us a lot of feedback. Also, managers gave us feedback. So we have a huge amount of information now regarding the strange situation they were going through during the pandemic. So that information has helped us to create the foundation for teleworking in an orderly manner, in a ruled manner, so that we can really meet the needs of our employees. So this has allowed us to be close to our people. They are people who might be going through very difficult situations at some point. Teleworking has been, of course, teleworking will stay, of course. It is a change that will just become a new normal. And we also have to be able to respond. We also have to be able to be at the level of expectations. We have also been looking at what we really needed to be able to work in a really new way. As we have said, we have worked with the technology department a lot to really adapt to the real needs and also to take into account all hygiene aspects. Another important thing we saw was that we need to help people who work in different fields and environments. We needed to help some people to self-manage and to manage their time, and we have been offering different kinds of training courses and quite avant-garde training too. Another important thing for us was to help our employees to feel, to be well. Their well-being has been very important for us, and we have created all kinds of KPIs, and we have been concerned about mindfulness too. We thought that it was very important to make sure that our employees really feel good, and it was important for us to think whether our managers could maybe care for their employees in a more human way, etc. So this has been very important too, and this has been a differentiating element, and this has really allowed us to be very close to people. So it has been a very nice experience, a very satisfying experience actually. We have to boost, as Sonia said, diversity. We have to support diversity. That is something key to us. And we have also seen that our co-workers have different needs. So we need different models of relations. So how do we relate to our managers? How do our employees relate to the different divisions of the company? So we have to think of all these diverse ways of relating and diverse ways of working too. This has to be taken into account too, because we have to be able to develop our skills. We have to be able to build up our skills. We have to understand also how we have to relate to people who carry out jobs or tasks that are totally different. Well, there are new challenges now because of these different relationships we have. So now if we want to visit a colleague, we don't go to the second floor, for instance, but we have to contact our colleagues in a totally different way. So these new technologies, or these technologies we are using to a large extent, have really impacted our human relations. So what we have to do now is boost new skills that are necessary in the new situation. And we have to help our employees to really get used to this new way of working. Thank you. Now, in the health sector, Javier, how have you faced these changes? Because you really have suffered a lot during the pandemic, haven't you? Well, in our case, and in these 4 hospitals that we are managing, well, I think that our case has been similar to other hospitals in the region. First of all, there has been a huge organizational change. Hospitals are defined structures which have been dimensioned to a certain number of cases every day, a predictable number. For instance, we know that we have flu in the winter, and in the summer usually the situation is easier, and based on that we plan our staff, we plan our activities, and we plan our resources. And suddenly this new disease appears which totally shakes our national health system, and we have to totally adapt to this new system, and we have to stop being hospitals with a specific program to becoming hospitals that improvise, that focus totally to, or almost totally to, a 97% of extent to this new disease, which is has a high degree of mortality, and this is something totally new we have never faced earlier. So this requires huge organizational changes in the short term. Also, the technical part has had to be changed. Our staff are dimensioned according to specialities and according to diseases, and suddenly you need new skills. Suddenly the skills you have might become obsolete, and suddenly you realize that you need specialists that are very skilled, for instance, in emergency care or in respiratory care. So we really have had to learn a lot in a very short time, and there has been a lot of fear too. We have been afraid for ourselves, for our relatives, for our patients. The first weeks were totally dramatic. We even sent our children far from Madrid to see their relatives. So we have been really in situations where we have been forced to take on board new resources and new aspects, and we have had to give supports in psychological matters too, for instance. And then after that, we really had to redimension our hospital. After the first emergency, we had to adapt to the second step, and of course this required us to totally change the structure and the organization of our company. Another important change has been the way we related to our patients. We have been isolated, we have been in a state of emergency for a very long time. We have been in lockdown in our homes, and we health professionals did not want to abandon those who were not able to go to hospital, people with chronic diseases. So we needed to find new formulae to care, to provide care to our patients. So suddenly in the 21st century we realized that we had the necessary tools. Our 4 hospitals have, for instance, a customer care service with 4,000 channels. We really needed the means and the tools we needed. We just had to get down to it. And then came the third big change, which was the leadership. Sonia said that more than ever we had to self-manage ourselves. Every person had to self-manage, to self-direct themselves more than ever. And they themselves have often proposed new formulae to be able to be in touch with patients through different methods. But now, very often, we had to work in a remote mode. So, on the one hand, organizational, on the other hand, relational models and professional leadership. These 3 key elements have allowed us to create or to develop smart rooms, for instance, in hospitals, for patients to be able to be in touch with their relatives remotely, and then also having professionals at the other side of the door in order not to have physical contact, so that we can continue to provide the correct service but in a safe manner. And so this remote way of taking care has been very, very important. Not only telephone calls and not only video conferences, but all kinds of remote techniques have been applied. And I think that the COVID pandemic has really accelerated the transformation a lot. Maybe this would have happened in 10 years and not now. Of course, there still is a challenging situation in hospitals, but we have stressed that really the pandemic has been a lot better than 10,000 years of coaching with regard to awakening to the need to change. So the tools are the talent and professionals and the new digital technologies and new digital tools, which allow us to be closely in contact amongst each other. So we have those tools, we have the resources, but the pandemic has really helped us accelerate the transformation. So the culture has really become a new thing.
4 or 5 years ago, we used these tools. We were already working on innovation, so these innovation cycles have been easier because it had already been incorporated into the company. But in the pandemic year, we multiplied by 10 the activity that was off-site, and almost half of it has stayed. So we've had organizational changes, relation changes, how we go about professional leadership, and this has come to stay, and that's our wish. Thank you very much, Javier. Now we're going to deal with a question, namely, I think we've all talked about talent. Employees do not only seek remuneration, good position, but rather they are also more sensitive to recognition within the company, having a different type of relation to other workers. So, Patricio, how can you attract that talent and make it and retain it? Well, we are going through difficult times. It has been a very difficult year, I think, in people's departments, same as in business departments. We've done the work of 4 years in just 1 year. We've made lots of progress. We're seeing what type of candidates we'll have in the future. For us, it has been very important to work with our employer brand, and it has also been very important to digitalize our recruiting processes. We try to give an opportunity to all workers within the postal service, and we've given them the opportunity to grow within our company. So from a branding point of view, we've got several hundreds of years of history, so we are quite powerful in that respect. For example, we've published 3,381 posts, and we've got more than 1,500 candidates. So we've got very attractive conditions for our candidates. So when we're talking about more specialized profiles, it is a priority for us to see how we can attract candidates, how we can work on our branding image before we even have candidates. That's something we're working on with our branding department. And once we kickstart the selection process, it is very important for us to take into account the experience of the employee from the very beginning, from the selection process on. So it is true that a selection process is not so positive initially for a candidate. Candidates are nervous, they're fearful, but it is also good to make those candidates to feel well and to draw some experience, some positive experience from that process. So we work a lot on that candidate experience, and we also ask lots of questions, how candidates felt, because we are working on that trip, let's say, which is the selection process for a candidate, so that we make the experience as positive as possible. So we work on the brand image in order to attract candidates and also in order to foster commitment on the part of candidates that proud to be part of our organization. And we work on that from the Department of Human Resources. So the brand image is very important and the experience as well. Yes, that's true. Nowadays, we are facing this question of talent, focusing on training schemes. We are talking about podcasts, e-learning courses, platforms, training pills, let's call them, facing up to new challenges. I would like to know which content is mostly demanded at the Quirón group, for example. What's the most attractive thing for candidates and workers to come and train themselves? Well, at the end of the day, we need to focus on two ideas. We need to see what's happening in society. Formats for drawing attention are changing. The visual format is more and more important. Times are shorter, and we all enjoy having fun. So we need to align these two ideas, and gamification does work. Having a fun environment, a rewarding experience. I, for example, belong to the X generation, so I've played video games quite a lot. So I think this mindset does work. So incorporating gamification elements does work. Also incorporating new ways to work remotely, teamwork, and generating learning through having fun, because there's a lot of evidence attesting to the fact that contents are better learned through a fun experience. Yes, Sonia.
Para nosotros un elemento diferencial ha sido
Marta.
conocer las inquietudes y las expectativas que tienen nuestros
Yes,
empleados. O sea,
for us it has been very important to
no solo
see
lo que pudiéramos hacer nosotros en
which
un
skills
despacho, de decir, proponer
were
fórmulas
present in our
atractivas
employees.
que potencien el
So
aprendizaje,
it was not
donde,
just about
como comentaba
deciding
Sonia, está clarísimo
things
que
in an
estamos ahora mismo en
office.
un momento donde
As Sonia
tenemos que seguir
said,
aprendiendo y donde para
right now
nosotros
we
la
need to keep on
apertura al
learning.
aprendizaje es una de las competencias que consideramos que es básica.
Culture and learning is one of the main skills that we consider as paramount and that we need to promote for employees, but it is important for us to know which expectations, which concerns our candidates have in relation to learning. And we've noticed that they need to reflect on what they need to learn. Namely, they need to be aware of opportunities for improvement. For example, we can accompany them, as we did last year before the COVID crisis. We started a program for development together with an NGO, so we realized how, by helping others, our employees could develop skills that they could apply to their own job. So there are many ways to improve, to learn, to develop oneself that go beyond being in a classroom, as we used to do traditionally. So there are many rewarding experiences. For example, how can I organize better by cooperating with the food bank? And how I can improve in my job, and how I can draw on others' help in order to improve as well. That's important in order to develop personally and professionally. So we are accompanying them in that process of talent management, and we are making them aware that by doing certain things they can improve their weak points. And that has been very helpful for us in order to open up our doors to other ways of learning. That's very good. So let's think about the future, about the future employee. Is it going to be an offshore cyber employee, or the factors of digitalization, innovation are going to be incorporated? Some people might be fearful. So how can we adapt the current worker to the future? Which advantages and disadvantages are they going to find, and how can they adapt to the new environments in organization? Let's start with the Quirón group. Yes, I think the first question we need to ask ourselves is, what is our sector going to look like in the future? For example, a hospital. Can we think about a hospital which we do not need to visit in the future? That might be because the way we do medicine is changing, drawing on information given to you by the patient or by checks, medical checks. But on many occasions, that information can be gathered remotely. So the hospital will be the place to which you will not have to go unless it's a very serious situation. You will be able to be connected through your mobile phone to the hospital. Professionals need to adapt to that change, because in the future the model is going to change completely, and not so much in the future as in the very present, because we are already providing services remotely to a very huge extent, and that's going to grow exponentially. We will be using gadgets in order to make patients able to get information, clinical parameters, and information that will also be available to the healthcare professional. to doctors, and also the possibility of teleworking in the healthcare sector is going to be there. So far, we were traditionally physically present with a table, an office, but that will not be so necessary in the future. We'll be able to work remotely, we'll be able to care for our patients from our homes, and in the healthcare sector, that transformation was complex. We're talking about professionals working for 12 hours in a row, so we think that the future hospital will be a place you will not have to visit physically. We think that the mobile phone will be key in this respect, and we think that medical professionals and healthcare professionals will have to adapt to this new situation. In our initial questionnaire, we asked surveyees whether they fear the job disappearing because of e-learning and other new developments. And more or less, half of these professionals fear their profession disappearing because of a technological change. So we need a cultural change. It's not just a technological change. Professionals need to know that they can own those processes. There will be a new way of working which will be much more sustainable, much more positive, much more beneficial in health terms. Diagnosis can be accelerated. We need to work on that change. Talent management will be a useful tool, and we need to add those new skills to the traditional ones. We know that nursery and traditional healthcare skills are very good in this country, but we need to go for new forms of communicating and paying attention to patients. We need to work along those lines if we want to welcome this new model, so that we can make that hospital a place we don't need to visit. So, what do you think the postal service employee is going to be in the future? Well, I think he or she is going to be different. We've got many types of employees. We're a very big organization. We've got many companies within one company. I think in the future, our employees will be pretty much dependent on our business model. We're talking about innovation, digitalization. You all know the postal service in Spain or in other countries, and we are evolving. We are changing the way we proceed worldly. Formerly, letters were the protagonist, and now we need to ask ourselves, for how long have we not written a letter? So we see how big the change has been. We are transforming how we manage staff. We're evolving as a company as well. And it is very important for us to be close to the business itself, to strategies, to the cultures that we need. If in human resources departments, we are a strategic partner for strategy directions. In that case, we'll identify future needs of our employees, we'll be able to accompany them in that strategy, and we'll be able to get to know better new positions so that we can adapt the people strategy. That way we'll be able to empower our internal professionals and make them adapt to the future business in terms of knowledge, of management, of personal and professional development. That way of doing things will allow us to anticipate needs in the medium and long term and to adapt to the future. That's an important thing for me. We'll be able to work together with our employees in order
Hasta
to
ahora hemos
cater
estado hablando
for
un poco de
future
lo que es
needs
el
of
entorno,
business.
de los cambios
So
que se
far, we've
están
been
sufriendo,
talking
pero ahora nos
about the
vamos a centrar
environment,
más concretamente,
changes
más
that are taking
específicamente en
place,
vuestras áreas y en vuestros
but we're
equipos de
going to
trabajo, ¿de
focus
acuerdo?
more specifically
¿Qué
on
creéis
your
vosotros?
specific
¿Qué
areas of
capacidades o
work.
qué áreas creéis que tenéis que fortalecer más
Which
sus
areas
habilidades, por
do
así
you think,
decirlo? Y
in which areas
cómo
do
se
you
va a
think you
realizar
need to
esta igualdad de
strengthen
niveles? Porque
new skills
entendemos
of
que
your
dentro de una organización
employees?
no todo el mundo
And
tiene el
how
mismo
is
nivel
that
de
going to be
capacidad, de
organized?
habilidades o de
Because
digital skills.
there are different levels
¿Cómo
within your
igualáis para que
organizations
todo
with
el mundo
different
parta
sorts
del
of
mismo
skills.
nivel?
How do you make everyone
Perfecto.
start from a more or less similar level?
Pues yo creo que venimos hablándolo durante toda la,
Well, I think
toda la
we've been
ponencia, ¿no? Al final
talking
hablamos
about that
de planes de capacitación, de las competencias de nuestros profesionales,
throughout the whole
pero si realmente esto le
panel.
damos la importancia que merece, ¿no? Al final,
If we
cómo identificamos
consider
para una
these
organización,
changes as
¿no?
important as they are,
Entonces es importante que realmente como organización, si esto nos preocupa, planifiquemos y trabajemos
we
en la
really need
capacitación
to
de nuestros profesionales.
plan
Y en ese
and to
sentido,
train
también
our
definir
professionals.
cuáles son las
We also
competencias,
need to
tanto del
define very
empleado
clearly
futuro, estábamos
which
hablando,
skills we need,
o de hacia dónde queremos llevar
what our
nuestra
future
organización,
employees
hacia dónde
are
queremos llevar
going
la estrategia.
to look
Nosotros
like,
en ese sentido sí que hicimos un ejercicio
how we want to
importante de
define our
reflexión,
strategy.
de la búsqueda de
We,
las
in our
competencias,
organization,
definimos las
we
8 competencias que creíamos
try
que
to
tenían que tener
identify
esos
8
grandes líderes que nos ayudarán también a
skills
transformar
that our big leaders had
nuestra
to
organización,
have
partiendo desde
in
las
order
bases,
to
como hablábamos
help
desde
us
el
to
principio.
transform our
Nosotros definimos 8
organization,
competencias, pero que
8
que
skills,
hacemos
8
desde el
strategies
plano, ¿no? Al final,
that
para
we've
que
been
realmente trabajemos
touching
de una manera más
upon,
colaborativa, que haya cambios
namely
en nuestros
working more
clínicos, pero también
cooperatively,
tecnológicos, también
fostering
colaborativos,
technological,
buscando
clinical, and
diferentes
cooperative
perfiles, trabajen juntos
changes,
pensando en esta
making
nueva
different
forma de trabajar,
profiles work together
en un entorno como el nuestro en el que
in an
como
environment
decía el doctor Arcos,
as
¿no? En
the
nuestro
one we
entorno,
work in.
el cambio viene de fuera, el cambio viene de la
Change
gente. Los
comes
pacientes
from
estamos pidiendo
outside,
una nueva
from
manera de
patients.
relacionarnos con la
Patients
parte
are
clínica,
asking us for a
que
new way
además
to
se ha
relate
visto
to each other.
tremendamente impactada por la COVID,
And
lo comentábamos,
the impact
es
of
un
COVID
catalizador
crisis
de toda
has
esta
been
forma, ¿no? Yo, si hoy puedo estar aquí con
gigantic.
vosotros y mi médico solo me
It
tiene que
has
dar un
been
resultado de salud,
a
prefiero que me dé de
catalyzing
una manera,
factor.
digital que
I
me
rather
permita,
have my doctor
aprovechar ese tiempo para
um,
hoy estar en otras cosas
give
que
me
para
a
mí son más
diagnosis
importantes.
remotely,
Evidentemente, si me tiene que explorar, si tiene que darme una
if
información,
possible,
ese es el tiempo de valor en el que el paciente queremos estar. Para
unless
eso tenemos que ayudar
they
también a
need
los
to
profesionales en esta nueva manera de
physically
relación.
check me. In that way,
En
we'll
un
be
mundo tan tradicional como es el de
using
salud,
that value time.
comentábamos antes, ¿no? Herramientas,
Uh,
todos hemos visto a los pacientes durante la COVID con enfermeras que
During the
conectaban con la
COVID
familia,
crisis,
nos
we've
hemos
seen
visto en un
how
entorno,
patients connected to their
altamente
nurses.
aislado, ¿no? Impuesto en el aislamiento de
We've
los
seen
pacientes,
how we
en
had
el
to
que los
cope with
profesionales
a very
tenían que saber
isolated
cómo
environment,
manejar
and
cosas que
professionals
habitualmente
needed
hacemos
to
en una
know
consulta,
how
el
to
informar a la
manage
familia, el
things that
compartir
we
cuáles
normally
son
do
el
physically,
plan terapéutico, las pruebas que vamos a realizar en un entorno
managing a
en el que no
relation
teníamos
to a
ese control.
family, to the
Estas
patient.
habitaciones digitales, por ejemplo, nos
These
permiten
digital rooms that
facilitar
have
al
been
paciente
mentioned
demandas que nunca han tenido, que
allow
es,
us
los pacientes
to
queremos saber qué pruebas me vas a
facilitate
realizar, qué va a
patients
pasar mañana, qué hora voy a tener el pase de visita,
showing
se puede
their
elegir el menú,
demands.
se
For
me puede
example,
entretener desde la habitación.
am I going
Son
to be
ejemplos
able to
sencillos,
choose the
pero
menu if
que
I'm
hasta
at the
este momento
hospital?
el personal de enfermería o el personal médico no estaba acostumbrado a que el paciente supiera en todo momento
So far,
qué pruebas me vas a realizar,
medical
cuánto tiempo, qué va a
professionals,
pasar,
nurses were
cómo
not
puedo
used
colaborar yo para esa
to giving
recuperación.
all that
Entonces,
information in
tenemos
real
que
time
formarlos
to
también en todas estas habilidades.
patients.
Comentaba Javier
So we need to
también, ¿no?
train
Dentro de
our
ciertas
professionals in
competencias
those new
digitales,
skills.
para nosotros era muy importante
In
el
digital
conocimiento de
competencies,
de
digital
otras
skills,
herramientas
it was
que
very
ya son
important to
nuestro
know
día a día,
other
el uso
tools that are
de
everyday
inteligencia
practice. For
artificial, de
example,
Big Data.
artificial
Hay muchos
intelligence, big
profesionales
data.
que pueden aportar
Many
muchísimo,
professionals
porque en
can
nuestro
provide
caso contamos
lots of
con un perfil
contributions
pues muy especializado y que
to
con el
this
uso
task
adecuado de
because
estas
we are
herramientas,
highly
y
specialized
sabiendo, qué esperamos de ellos,
by using these
es mucho más
tools and by
fácil, ¿no?
knowing
Así que al final el
what our
definir bien las
expectations are,
competencias en las que queremos trabajar,
we can work
el contar con
positively.
herramientas
That's
que nos permita
important.
saber en qué punto están nuestros profesionales en esas
Having
competencias
tools
y evaluar
that tell us
en proyectos como el de
at
Talento,
what
¿no? En el que
stage
he
our
definido
professionals
una
are in
trayectoria
that
para cada uno de ellos,
transformation
en nuestro
is
caso
also
6
very
meses,
important.
con
We can
trayectorias
define
específicas,
specific
incluso muy personalizadas a las
paths
competencias
of
que tenemos
learning
cada uno
for
de
our
ellos.
professionals, for example, 6-month
Permite
paths.
enganchar también con la parte que comentaba antes Patricia, ¿no? De
And
ese
as Patricia was
reconocimiento,
saying,
más informal, no solamente el incentivo económico,
an
que
informal
también está,
recognition is
sino un
also important, not just
reconocimiento
money.
a que en nuestro
for
caso
our
ellos valoran
professionals.
mucho el que lo que estoy haciendo está permitiendo cambiar la
So
forma de hacer sanidad.
our professionals
Está permitiendo
value very highly the fact that they are offering the best service possible and that they are contributing to the way we are providing those services. And that also that's also very beneficial to the patient. So we need to rethink the way we work and to align our strategies to that new way of doing things. Now we are going to talk about the future leader. So, Patricia, in the postal service, how do you conceive the new leader with their ability to network? Well, I think a leader is always necessary at all levels of our organization. We need to focus on team leaders, no matter their position within the hierarchy. For us, the figure of the leader has been very important, and we draw on every interaction he or she has with employees in order to make that figure more powerful. In people's departments, if we see that we need to improve something, we draw on data on how they are perceived by responsible people in charge. Namely, having a clear picture of how you are perceived is very important. Traditionally, in our organization, we've come from more authoritarian leaders to new figures. I think that has been true for many companies that have been there on the market for a while. And now we go for more of a coach. It's important to generate trust in teams, and learning, as we were saying earlier, is very important. Promoting learning within teams and making them autonomous.
So these are new ways of working, and regardless of the position they hold within the company, these skills are extremely important. They have to enable conversations, communication, which we have not had until now. But this conversation, this way of interacting helps us build and develop. So this new leader has to be a good communicator, a good speaker. He has to be good at interpersonal skills. He will need or she will need to be able to give feedback when goals are being achieved and when they are not being achieved too. So these new leaders need to have skills that turn that person into some kind of hub, some kind of central point. And if we talk about the future employee, well, what we ask them is for them to be team players. Sometimes we label the skills employees need to have, and they are somehow vague. Now, future employees will need to be able to work on a team with people they have physically close and with people who are not physically close. They will have to use Teams and the telephone and emails and other technological devices and channels, and they will need to be able to work on such a hybrid team. With the current technologies, this is totally possible, of course, but this is something that also requires new talents and new know-how from employees. Of course, then you have to be very agile and very fast in decision-making. You have to be analytic too, to be able to analyze situations and make the right decisions. You will need to be able to anticipate events too. So at People's Department, we really have had to work a lot when thinking about these new skills and turn them into a reality. So we are reaching the end of this roundtable now. I would like to thank our panelists for their participation, Patricia Álvarez, Javier Arcos, and Marta del Olmo. Thank you very much. Nevertheless, I have one last question. Could you define with one or two words, one or two adjectives, which are the skills, which is the know-how, which are the skills that a business needs to have in-house. Well, there are many, as we have already mentioned. I think that working together, working on a team is more important than ever. Working together, that's just key. And well, also the ability to be enthusiastic about your work. We have not talked about that yet, but it is important to be enthusiastic about your colleagues as people, as human beings, not only as professionals. Okay, noted. So, enthusiasm and working together. I would add to this, having an open mind, because life is a challenge and it changes at a high speed all the time, and also the ability to learn. So this is almost the same as continual lifelong training. So these two, open mind and the ability to learn. Well, I totally agree with both of you. And as it has already been said, I think that reinventing yourself, the ability to question what you do, the ability to question your habits, your ways of working, so I think that that's very important too. It's very important to be self-critical. And also perseverance, being insistent, that's very important. Not to give in, that's really important, because our lives are full of challenges and we are not always successful at the first attempt. And so we have to be very vigilant also in order to not be late. We have to be on top of changes at all times. So, trial and mistake, right, as is often said. Thank you to all of you, and thank you to Madrid Platform for giving us the opportunity to hold this talent management roundtable on behalf of Barrabés and on behalf of myself. I would like to thank you. And now we would need to clean the room, so we would need 3 minutes for this. And after that we will have a conversation in just 3 minutes, okay?
Welcome back. We continue being here, Madrid platform, on our third day. We welcome those of you following us remotely from some further away place in the world. Our conversation continues also through our hashtag. Our next speaker will be Enrique Coronas. He's the director of the Attitude Academy of Parabes.biz, and you're going to tell us about how, during the pandemic, very powerful ideas of union and cooperation between public and private entities have come up. So go ahead.
Bueno, buenos días a todos y a
Good morning to you all.
Y sobre todo gracias por la oportunidad de estar aquí con Attitude Academy. Siempre nos gusta contar y hacer que esto sea más grande y más potente. Yo quería empezar hoy hablando de algo para que se nos quede a todos claro en la cabeza y que todos tengamos presentes de qué es el panorama o el escenario de pymes y autónomos en España. De pymes y autónomos. Estamos hablando de 1,6 millones de autónomos y 1,2 millones que crean 8,5 millones de puestos de trabajo. Esta es la realidad que tenemos hoy aquí. Aportan el 65% del PIB,
they contribute 65% of GDP and 75% of jobs, and they represent 99.2% of the productive sector. This is the reality of SMEs and self-employed people in Spain. Starting from that, if we were to come to a diagnosis of the Spanish SME and to see
hay un escenario de mejora importante,
where they need
podríamos hablar
help,
seguramente de
where
productividad,
there's room for
podríamos hablar
improvement,
de
most probably we
internacionalización
would be
y
talking
podríamos hablar
about
de tamaño.
productivity,
Pensemos que la pyme
internationalization,
española
and size.
tiene una
Let's say
media de
that the Spanish
4,6 trabajadores, más o
SME
menos,
has an average of
esa media, y que
4.6
hay por delante una vía
workers,
de crecimiento pensando
and
en que
there's
cada vez necesitamos
a path for
pymes más
growth.
fuertes, pymes que
We need
suponen tener una
stronger
clase media potente
SMEs
aquí en
based on a
España
more
y
powerful
tener un modelo de
middle class
crecimiento
in Spain
en este
and
sentido.
having
Pero
a growth model that
nos vamos un
that
añito más atrás,
accompanies them in that process.
y
If we
retrocedemos
go back
a ese
a
momento en el
year
que
to that very
vino
moment
de
when
repente una pandemia
the
y
pandemic
nos marchamos a casa.
started and we
En
had to
ese
go
momento,
home,
en Barrabés,
back then
tuvimos dos
at
cosas muy claras.
Barrabés we
Una
had two
primera
very clear
era
ideas.
que teníamos que estar más cerca que
First,
nunca de
we
nuestros
had to be
clientes,
as close
que teníamos que ver
as ever
hasta el último momento y llevarlo hasta el
to our
extremo la forma en que
clients.
podíamos estar presentes
We had
en,
to be
en las cosas que
present,
estamos haciendo con ellos y
as
cómo podíamos
present
seguir
as possible
mejorando
in our work
estos
with them
proyectos y
and to
estas
see
iniciativas.
how we could
Pero había otra
keep on
segunda
improving
cosa,
those
que era
initiatives
que
and
teníamos que
projects.
ver la manera
But there was another
de
thing.
estar lo más cerca
We
posible
had to see
del tejido
how we
empresarial
could be as
español,
close as
de estar
possible
cerca de las pymes,
to
de lo que representa
companies,
a este
to
país
SMEs
y
in
cómo
Spain.
podíamos poner nuestro granito de
They
arena
represent
para
our country,
ayudarlas
and we had to
en aquello
contribute
que
to helping them
representan esos ejes de crecimiento
in
que hablábamos
those
antes, aparte de
growth
productividad, de
axes
digitalización,
that we
de
were
transformación.
mentioning.
¿Cómo podíamos hacer
Digitalization,
desde
transformation,
Barrabés, que
productivity,
somos una
all
pyme
very
muy
important,
desde
but we
hace
also had to see
muchísimos años
how
y que conocemos
we,
bien
as
la
an
realidad de las
SME
pymes,
ourselves,
cómo podíamos estar cerca y cómo podíamos
be
saber
close
tener un
to
modelo
them,
en el que pudiéramos estar
and
presentes en
how
sus
we could
vidas
have a
y
model
ayudarles
to
en
be
este
present
momento
in
tan
their lives
complicado.
and to
Yo
help them in
me hago una
such a
reflexión siempre
complicated moment as the
cuando la
one
gente
we're
habla de
going
las
through.
pymes y me gusta pensar
When
que
people
todo el
talk
mundo
about
conoce una pyme, porque eso no es tan
SMEs,
obvio.
I
Conocemos,
would
hemos
like
tenido
to think that
contactos
everyone
todos los
knows
días, tenemos
an SME.
con pymes, con comercios, pero realmente conocer a una pyme
Do
no
we
es tan obvio.
actually
Yo,
know a
vengo
small and
por
medium-sized
situación familiar,
enterprise,
vengo
an SME?
de una pyme
Well,
muy chiquitita,
I come
pero
from a very
luego trabajo
small
en otra
SME,
pyme, he trabajado
but
con grandes pymes,
I
he trabajado
have
con grandes corporaciones,
experience
pero
in working
cuando
with other
realmente estás
SMEs,
cerca
with
de
big
una pyme
corporations,
y
but
la ayuda,
when
yo
one
creo que
is
se monta, hay
close
una
to an
relación
SME,
que es tremenda.
a
Hay
relationship
un modelo de empatía que dura
starts,
durante muchísimos
which
años
is very
y que
powerful,
realmente hay un
based on
agradecimiento
empathy,
cuando realmente estás
lasting for
cerca
years.
de este colectivo o de esta tipología de
And that's something
empresas.
we can do by being close to these type of companies.
Estábamos en casa esa primera semana, que
So
era
that
allá por
very
el
first week
12 de marzo
of the
aproximadamente.
pandemic, around the 12th of
Teníamos
March, we were
esta
at
idea en la
home,
cabeza
and we
y
had
Carlos
that
sobre todo
idea in mind,
decía,
and Carlos
tenemos que ver la manera de encontrar
thought, okay,
un
we need
camino
to
para
see
ayudar a este
how we
colectivo de
can
pymes.
help
Attitude Academy
SMEs.
era una cosa que
And
teníamos
the
dentro de
Attitude
casa,
Academy
dentro de
was something we
Barrabés,
had at
y
home,
decidimos ponerlo encima de la mesa
inside Barrabés,
y a través de 3
and
ejes
we
ver cómo podíamos realmente llegar
presented
al
this
mayor
project
número posible
based on 3 axes,
de
and we tried to
pymes y
see how we
autónomos aquí
could
en España.
approach
¿Sobre qué trabajamos?
as
Trabajamos
many
sobre un modelo
SMEs
de
and
tecnología,
freelancers as possible.
trabajamos sobre
We
un
work
modelo
on a
de
model
servicios
based on
y de
technology,
contenidos, y
services,
trabajamos
content,
sobre un modelo de persona,
and people.
fundamental a la hora de poder
That's
hacer crecer y llevar
fundamental
todo
when
esto
trying to make
al mayor
things
número
grow
de pymes
and
posibles.
to
Si hablamos de
approach as
tecnología,
many SMEs as
nosotros
possible.
pusimos nuestra tecnología
If
a
we talk
disposición
about
de la
technology,
comunidad,
we
pusimos nuestros algoritmos
provided
a
technology
disposición
to the
de esta
community.
comunidad y pensamos
We also
que
provided
teníamos
them
que
with
tener
algorithms,
un modelo específico
and we
de
thought that we
servicios y
needed
de
a specific
contenidos
model of
adaptados
services and
a las
contents
necesidades
adapted to the
específicas
specific
de las
needs
pymes y los
of
autónomos
SMEs and
de la manera tal
freelancers
que pudiéramos estar lo más cerca posible. Esto
in a
significaba
way that we
adecuar
could be
contenidos,
as
personalizar
close
experiencias
as
y
possible
sobre
to
esto,
them.
perdón. No, está bien. Personalizar experiencias y utilizar
Customizing
un modelo de
experiences was
matching
important as
entre
well.
personas, contenidos
We needed to
y
match
asesores
people,
que permitiera a
contents,
una pyme tener un
and
modelo
advisors
experiencial durante todo su camino dentro de
in a
Attitude
way
Academy.
that an SME
¿Qué
could
hacíamos
have
en Attitude
a
Academy? Lo que hicimos fue
experiential model.
trabajar sobre 7 ejes de transformación y
Worked
digitalización
on
y a partir
7
de esos 7
axes
ejes
based on
empezar a
transformation
generar
and
todo un conglomerado
digitalization, and
de
starting from that,
servicios,
we
programas
would
y
generate
contenidos.
a whole
Hablábamos de
set
digitalización,
of
hablábamos de transformación,
services,
pero era
programs.
importante porque en aquel momento, ese 23 de marzo en el que,
On the
Attitude
23rd of
Academy
March
llegó a la calle,
last year,
nosotros
when
lo que buscábamos todos,
Attitude
recuerdo
Academy
que eran soluciones a
started,
problemas que teníamos justo delante. Y ahí
we
empezamos
tried
a
to
dotar de
offer
la
solutions
plataforma de
to problems we were
una serie de
facing
webinars,
directly.
una serie de
We offered
formaciones
different
súper
webinars,
rápidas con píldoras que
very
solucionaban problemas en temas de digitalización,
quick
que lo que
training
nos permitía era
sessions with training
aquellas
bills.
pymes que necesitaban soluciones
So
sobre transformación, sobre teletrabajo, sobre
SMEs
venta
that
online, sobre
needed
marketing digital.
training on
Ellos que acababan
digitalization,
de cerrar sus comercios, que
digital
veían
marketing,
la
transformation,
necesidad de interlocutar con sus clientes o trabajar desde otros
they were
entornos
facing
y que no sabían muy bien
difficulties
cómo,
on how
vean en
to
este
interact
entorno
with their
cómo
clients to
podíamos
adapt to
solucionar todas
different
estas necesidades
environments.
a corto plazo.
So we
A partir de aquí
tried
se
to
empezó
reflect
a
on how we
trabajar
could
en
cater
otra
for
línea
those
completamente
needs.
diferente.
So
Nosotros
we started
veíamos la
working
posibilidad de
along a
trabajar a corto plazo,
very different
pero
line,
necesitábamos también
namely
un modelo más
working
estratégico
short term,
a medio y
but we
largo
also
plazo.
needed a
Para
more
nosotros
strategic
este modelo a
model
medio y largo
for the
plazo
long
lo que
and
suponía era
medium
generar
term,
programas donde mezclábamos
namely generating
diferentes tipologías
programs
de contenidos
with
con
different typologies
asesoramientos
of contents,
personalizados
with
y a partir de aquí
customized
pudiéramos trabajar
or
en programas donde
individualized
durante 2-3 meses pudiéramos
advice,
estar acompañando a pymes y
and for
autónomos
2 or
en
3
sus
months
procesos de transformación.
we could accompany
Esto,
SMEs
que para nosotros
along the
era
process of their
algo
transformation.
muy natural, lo que
That was
significaba era tener un
very
modelo de
natural for
confianza
us, but for
para que
us,
una pyme o
it
un
also
autónomo
meant to
pudiera entrar dentro de lo
work
que era
on
nuestro
a
ecosistema de
trust-based model
productos,
so that
contenidos,
an
a la hora
SME
de
or a
tener una
self-employed
experiencia de Attitude
person
Academy
could
y
access
poder estar llevando
content
desde
model
un punto completamente inicial
so that they could
hasta
go
otro
from a
bastante más potente.
starting
Nosotros
point
pensamos
to
que qué
a
ocurre
final point,
dentro de Attitude
which would
Academy
be
y cuando
quite
pensamos
different.
en un modelo de
So what
plataforma
happens within
donde
Attitude Academy?
hablamos de que hemos
We might think about a
gestionado un
specific model of
ecosistema
the platform,
donde han participado no
platform,
solo pymes, sino
allowing us to manage a
asesores,
model of
asociaciones,
SMEs,
cámaras de
advisors,
comercio, grandes corporaciones, y
chambers
donde
of
todos hemos
commerce,
nacido con un propósito común,
big
que es
associations.
ayudar y apoyar
We've
a
all
la
worked
pyme
on a
en lo que
model
son un modelo de transformación y digitalización
aimed
basado
at
en el apoyo en el
helping
talento
SMEs
de
and
este
supporting
colectivo.
them
Nosotros pensamos
in
que
their
necesitábamos tener
digitalization.
un modelo en el que
in
habláramos
that
de
context,
inspiración y comunicación,
We thought we had to
donde
go for a
a
model
partir de
based
aquí
on
hubiera una parte de
inspiration and
formación,
communication.
donde
The
tuviéramos
training
una parte de
component was
asesoramiento
important as
y
well,
de
an advising
cercanía
component as
con
well,
las pymes para
proximity
poder
to
llegar al
SMEs,
punto donde
and in that
gestionáramos
way,
esa comunidad
we
y
could
pudiéramos
manage
activar
that
proyectos.
community
Attitude Academy, que es una plataforma de talento, que es
Attitude
una
Academy
plataforma donde apoyamos la formación dirigida al colectivo de pymes y autónomos en España. Independientemente de que están entrando muchas personas, sobre todo de Latinoamérica, y se están beneficiando de este programa de Barrabés, nosotros lo que pusimos son diferentes caminos para llegar a un objetivo. El objetivo es que una pyme se transforme, que una pyme se digitalice, que una pyme genere más talento dentro de su casa y que eso suponga poder alcanzar unos objetivos. Dentro de esto hay muchos ejemplos. O sea, aquí pusimos un ejemplo de una cosa que era con una bodega chiquitita que recuerdo con muchísimo cariño. Pero hay 25.000 ejemplos donde podemos estar hablando de cosas que han estado sucediéndose y que realmente han llegado a un modelo de relación donde hay una pyme, donde ha habido un asesor, donde ha habido una corporación, donde ha habido una asociación, donde ha habido una denominación de origen y donde el camino ha sido desde conocer un contenido que nosotros estábamos generando y distribuyendo dentro de nuestro ecosistema, pasar por un proceso de formación, pasar por un proceso de asesoramiento donde un asesor realmente cogía y en un proceso de 20, 30 minutos diagnosticaba cuáles eran sus necesidades y buscaba una solución en ese punto donde llevaba a la pyme a otro momento de digitalización y donde realmente se generaba a través de todo esto un modelo de comunidad que permitía tener un modelo de relación. Cuando hablamos de ecosistema y de gestionar una comunidad que fomente el talento dentro de la pyme y que fomente todo lo que es el modelo de transformación y digitalización. Es importante contar con una red de partners, pero la red de partners tienen que tener todos un mismo propósito y tener un mismo fin, que para nosotros era apalancar todo el conocimiento de los partners de Barrabés y de la comunidad con el único objetivo de apoyar lo que era la parte de transformación y digitalización de la pyme. Yo siempre digo que Attitude Academy es una plataforma que nace en Barrabés, pero que es de todos. Siempre, nunca hemos negado el acceso a ningún partner. Siempre hemos buscado las maneras de colaboración. Siempre hemos tenido en la cabeza tener diferentes vías de acceso a las pymes para tener los modelos de transformación que hay en casa, los modelos de formación y llegar a poder hacerlo. Nuestro partner casi principal, Attitude Academy, es un programa de Red.es, dentro de lo que es el programa Acelera Pyme, que está fomentando todo lo que es el modelo de transformación y digitalización del tejido empresarial español. Y durante este año que llevamos trabajando, pues bueno, hemos trabajado con un gran colectivo de partners. Aquí tenéis algunos ejemplos y cualquiera que se quiera sumar a esta iniciativa, pues siempre será bienvenido. Pero posiblemente lo más importante de Attitude Academy son los voluntarios. No hubiéramos podido hacer nada sin esta red de voluntarios que de una forma completamente altruista pues van más de un año colaborando con nosotros y podemos ahora decir seguramente que Attitude Academy es la plataforma con la red más grande de voluntarios que apoyan a las pymes de habla hispana. Attitude Academy, con los diferentes programas de asesoramiento, con los diferentes niveles de expertos en las diferentes áreas temáticas. Desde el primer momento, nosotros sabíamos que nosotros no éramos suficientes, digo nosotros, el equipo de Barrabés, a la hora de poder coger y llevar esto a otro nivel. Y lo que hicimos fue abrir a que las personas que quisieran, asesores, mandos intermedios, mandos directivos de grandes corporaciones, gestores, pequeñas consultoras, pudieran estar dentro de Attitude Academy ofreciendo, por un lado, pues 20 minutos de consultoría gratuita, entrar en un programa de asesoramiento durante 3 meses para hablar de temas estratégicos. Y esto lo que nos ha generado es tener la capacidad de que una pyme, un autónomo, entre en una plataforma y encuentre a alguien que está ajustado a sus necesidades y a partir de ahí puedan generar un entorno de confianza donde hacer crecer a esa pyme, a ese autónomo, fomentando toda su parte de talento y fomentando, por otro lado, sus modelos de digitalización y transformación. Por último, me gustaría destacar un poco en un año, a través de un modelo 100% digital a través de un modelo que creamos con nuestra propia tecnología y nuestros algoritmos que nos facilitaban un poco todo lo que era la parte de crecimiento, de relación entre pymes, asesores, expertos, programas formativos, podcasts, todo lo que era la parte que nosotros estábamos ofreciendo, pues ahora mismo para nosotros es muy importante el saber que más de 20.000 pymes y autónomos han pasado directamente por los servicios y por nuestros programas formativos, que el impacto pues ha llegado a más de 300.000 de estas pymes y autónomos que hablábamos al principio, que tenemos un gran recorrido y aún muchas cosas por hacer, y que esto es un compromiso que adquirimos hace un año y que Attitude Academy pues, va a seguir presente pues, durante mucho tiempo y sobre todo pues, en estos momentos tan complejos que estamos viviendo, pues por lo menos dar la cara y poder ayudar pues, a tantas personas que lo necesitan y que seguramente pues, podamos hacer crecer pues, este ecosistema de pymes y autónomos que hay en España y reforzar esta clase media potente que necesita este país. Hay una cosita más que me gustaría ver con vosotros. Estamos, una de las cosas más potentes de Attitude Academy ha sido su programa Asesora a una pyme. Ahora abrimos hace un mes la segunda edición de este programa y está abierta a asesores, consultores y por supuesto a pymes y autónomos. Lo que hacemos son 3 meses de asesoramiento estratégico que es completamente gratuito para las pymes, y me gustaría pues, enseñar un poco qué ha sido y qué representa un programa como este, qué representa Attitude Academy en la vida de las pymes y de los autónomos españoles, y cómo cualquiera ahora mismo de los que estáis aquí y queréis participar de una iniciativa tan bonita como esta, pues seréis bienvenidos, y cuando queráis, pues Attitude Academy está a vuestra disposición. Muchas gracias.
Attitude Academy opens its doors to you. A year ago, many companies needed help, a lot of help.
Entre la pandemia, todo, bueno, se cae todo. Las oficinas desaparecen, no se sabe cuándo van a volver, una especie de locura.
Hay un momento difícil, un momento en que solamente te están cayendo golpes.
You know, everything is terrible around, challenges everywhere. Many professionals decided to take a step ahead.
De repente conocí este programa.
Suddenly, I learned about this program. For me, this has been trust. This has been a companion in a journey through the desert. This is a free-of-charge program of strategic advice for SMEs. We have renowned experts in different fields, such as business strategy, digitalization, e-commerce, funding, technology.
Ha sido un éxito por el alcance que puedes tener y la repercusión que puedes tener. La verdad es que ha sido una maravilla.
This has been a miracle.
Y me ayuda a tener un desarrollo, yo creo, lo más eficiente posible. Pero es como que
Repetiría, lo recomendaría, muy agradecido por toda la organización.
Hemos sentido que realmente ha sido un antes y después, ¿no? En este interés mutuo. Muy contento. Volvería a participar.
It has been very important for me. We reinforce our commitment, and we are launching our second edition. Does your SME need help? We know how to help you. Sign up. Advising SMEs.
Otro caso inspirador.
So another inspiring case, we have seen so many of them in these 3 Madrid platform days in this first Latin American European Business Hub. Thank you, Barbara. Thank you, Enrique Corona. We now need again 3 minutes to carry out our COVID measures, and at 12 we will continue with our session on business and opportunities in Latin America. Don't leave, please.